Welcome everyone to today's hearing on artificial intelligence and criminal exploitation. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Lee, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. I appreciate everyone being here today, our witnesses and those in the audience. This is an important hearing which focuses on artificial intelligence and how it is being exploited by criminals. The conceptual roots of AI can be traced to British mathematician Alan Turing, who in the 1930s theorized about machine being capable of performing any computable task. Today, AI is best understood as a branch of computer science that leverages large-scale data processing, algorithmic modeling, and modern hardware to enable machines to perform tasks typically requiring human cognition. Unfortunately, like most technical innovation, the criminal element has begun to use AI to enhance their illicit activities. AI-enabled threats continue to evolve as bad actors use AI technology in a wide spectrum of criminal enterprises. From deepfake scams and synthetic identity fraud to financial crimes and child sexual abuse material, CSAM, the landscape continues to evolve at a rapid pace as AI provides users with enhanced capabilities. AI-based or AI-driven threats and schemes can cost businesses millions of dollars a year, including both prevention and falling prey to them. In one case, fraudsters used AI to clone a CEO's voice and authorize a wire transfer. Among corporations that experienced a rise in deepfake incidents, 75% of deepfakes impersonated a CEO or another C-suite executive. Generative AI enables the criminal exploitation of victims' emotional vulnerabilities through tactics such as sextortion, pig butchering scams, phishing, and elder fraud. Senior citizens are increasingly targeted through voice phishing scams where an AI-generated replica of a grandchild or military officer claims to need urgent funds. In one case, a Colorado mother received a call from what sounded like her daughter pleading for help. The voice was AI-generated, cloned from a short online clip, and used to demand ransom. The voice was indiscernible to the mother who wired $1,000 to scammers in Mexico. AI is also fueling a rise in sextortion and synthetic CSAM. New AI tools can generate highly realistic but entirely fabricated explicit images, often used to extort minors or damage reputations. Some sextortion scams exploit the trust associated with platforms like Apple's iMessage by impersonating classmates or romantic interests via recognizable blue bubble interfaces. Criminals now deploy apps like MUA to fabricate child abuse images at scale. Stanford University researchers have uncovered evidence that generative models were trained on real exploitative content. Terrorist groups now utilize AI to target, recruit, and indoctrinate vulnerable individuals. Generative AI provides a degree of separation, allowing actual terrorists to maintain anonymity in their public-facing recruiting practices. Generative AI also allows terrorists to produce propaganda, fake news stories, and emotionally resonant messages tailored to specific psychological profiles. Reports of generative artificial intelligence enabled scams between May of 2024 and May of 2025 rose by 456%. The use of exploitative generative AI allows criminals to produce human-like text, code, images, and videos, allowing criminals to use the technology for further criminal activities such as creating more realistic phishing lures or generating deepfakes for extortion. On average, phishing attacks cost $4.9 million per breach. On the other hand, AI is increasingly integrated into police investigations, offering new tools and capabilities for law enforcement agencies amid the backdrop of rapidly expanding digital data sources and increasing demands on law enforcement agencies. AI provides a more adaptable and comprehensive approach to solving crimes compared to traditional methods, leveraging data analytics, machine learning, and pattern recognition to enhance investigations and assist with administrative tasks. This is also potentially a problem as well, as we seek to balance curbing AI with our civil rights. AI can also help process large volumes of data, identify patterns, and generate actionable insights, and in turn, these applications can improve efficiency, accuracy, and resource allocation with investigative processes. However, to fully benefit from AI applications, law enforcement entities need reliable data, human oversight, and while also tackling issues related to privacy, bias, and ethical considerations. Addressing the continued misuse of AI will require a varied approach while also raising public awareness about the risks associated with AI-generated content. Law enforcement agencies must engage openly with community stakeholders, legal experts, and the public to communicate the intended uses, benefits, and limitations of AI technologies. A collaborative effort to both prevent the misuse of AI while encouraging lawful application is required to effectively navigate this evolving landscape. I am excited for today's hearing. I think this is the first of its kind. I believe it will be only the first of its kind as we consider AI and its continued expansion of influence in our lives. And I'm looking for a very substantive discussion I anticipate a substantive discussion that we're going to have today. And with that, I yield back and recognize now our ranking member, Ms. McBath, for her opening statement.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses today. Thank you so much for taking moments out of your day to come before us. Thank you for convening this hearing to discuss AI-enabled crime, efforts to detect and combat such crime, and how law enforcement deploys AI tools. Like so many new technologies, AI is not inherently good or bad. AI-enabled tools can find patterns, sort through vast amounts of information, and may even help law enforcement solve their crimes. But in the wrong hands, the same tools can be used to commit financial fraud, breach national security systems, and to harm our children. When used by law enforcement, this technology has the potential to empower our investigators while also carrying the risk of serious errors with life-changing consequences. That is why it is critical that we proceed thoughtfully and put appropriate guardrails in place so that everyone in our criminal justice system that is using AI-enabled tools, they're using them responsibly, not to the detriment of law-abiding members of our communities. We've already seen what can go wrong when those safeguards are missing. A woman and her family experienced the dangers of using AI-enabled facial recognition technology. Detroit police used a facial recognition tool in an attempt to identify a carjacking suspect using an image from a surveillance camera. The tool matched the surveillance image with a picture of Portia Woodruff, a nursing school student. One morning, as Miss Woodruff was getting her two children ready for school, police knocked on her door and they told her that she was under arrest for carjacking. She knew right away there must be some kind of mistake, and she gestured at her body as she spoke to law enforcement to point out the obvious, she hoped, to law enforcement, that she was 8 months pregnant. Though the police had not been looking for a visibly pregnant woman, they still handcuffed Ms. Woodruff, took her away from her crying children, held her for 11 hours, searched her phone, and they charged her. After her release, she went straight to the hospital and was treated for dehydration. The charges were dismissed a month later. This case is especially troubling because facial recognition tools have been shown to perform worse on Black individuals, increasing the risk of misidentification and contributing to over-criminalization. AI is only as good as the data it is trained on. And when that data is biased, it exacerbates racial disparities, long embedded in our criminal justice system. An inaccurate tool is dangerous for every single one of us. Not one of us is immune to these mistakes. Thankfully, and in due part to cases like this one, The City of Detroit has adopted new rules to direct the use of facial recognition technology within its police department. And they're simply not alone. Many cities and states have put sensible guardrails in place to limit potentially harmful uses of AI. That's why it was alarming when some of my Republican colleagues recently attempted to pass a moratorium on state and local AI regulations in the Big Ugly Bill, a move that generated bipartisan opposition so much that 40 states' attorneys general and 17 Republican governors, including the governor of my state, Georgia, wrote letters to the Senate in opposition to the proposed moratorium. The governors warned that, and I'm quoting them, people will be at risk until basic rules ensuring safety and fairness can go into effect, end quote. As you'll see behind me, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the Republican governor of Arkansas and former press secretary to President Trump, took to Twitter to quote, "I stand with a majority of GOP governors against stripping states of the right to protect our people from the worst abuses of AI. The U.S. must win the fight against China on AI and everything else. But we won't if we sacrifice the health, safety, and prosperity of our people," end quote. While this most recent proposal was ultimately stripped from the bill by a 99-1 vote of the Senate, the Republican chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee has already vowed to continue to pursue a moratorium, even while acknowledging that federal regulations on AI are still light years away. I stand with those seeking to protect the health and the safety and civil rights of our communities from the abuses of AI, and I hope that we can come together and follow the lead of the states to explore what those guardrails should look like and put them in place. I look forward to learning more from our experts here today. Hearing from you is going to be extremely critical for us on this very important issue. But before I yield, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record two letters. The first, a letter from 17 Republican governors in opposition to a moratorium on state and local regulation on AI, and the second, a letter from 40 state attorneys general, both Republican and Democrats, in opposition to a moratorium on state and local regulation of AI.
Without objection.
I yield.
The gentlelady yields. Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We'll now introduce today's witnesses, and we're very grateful for our witnesses. Dr. Andrew Bowne, okay. Dr. Bowne is a professorial lecturer in law at the George Washington University Law School, where he teaches courses on artificial intelligence law and policy. He has served in the United States Air Force Judge Advocate General Corps since 2010 and previously served as the Chief Legal Counsel of the Department of the Air Force Artificial Intelligence Accelerator at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Thank you, Doctor, for being with us today. Mrs. Zara Perumal, there you go, is the co-founder and Chief Technology Officer of Overwatch Data, an artificial intelligence company focused on threat intelligence and cybercrime tactics on the dark web. Prior to founding Overwatch Data, she worked at Google on matters involving machine learning and cybersecurity threats. Thank you for being with us today, Ms. Perumal. Mr. Ari Redboard is the global head of policy at TRM Labs, a company focused on preventing illicit financial activity. He previously served as senior advisor to the Deputy Secretary and Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence at the U.S. Treasury. Prior to Treasury, he was an assistant U.S. attorney where he focused on terrorism, espionage, financial, child exploitation, and human trafficking cases. Thank you, Mr. Redboard, for being with us today. Mr. Cody Vinsky is a senior policy counsel in the ACLU's National Political Advocacy Department, where his work focuses on surveillance, privacy, and technology. Specifically, he works on matters related to artificial intelligence, privacy, children's privacy, and civic uses of data. Thanks, Mr. Vinsky, for being with us today. We appreciate all of you being here, and now ask that you please rise so you can be sworn in. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect the witnesses have answered in the affirmative, and thank you. You may be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that your testimony be summarized in 5 minutes. And what's going to happen, just so you know, is when I get about 15 seconds before the end, you'll start hearing this, something like that. And then at the magic moment, I'll start getting a little bit louder, but we're trying to help you wrap up on time so we can work this out. But we're so grateful that you're here. Mr. Bowne, you may begin with your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ranking member, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the intersection of artificial intelligence and criminal exploitation. My name is Andrew Bowne. I serve as a professional lecturer at the George Washington University Law School, where I teach courses on AI law and policy. I've served in the United States Air Force Judge Advocate General's Corps since 2010, including assignments as a prosecutor, a staff judge advocate, so general counsel of the Air Force installation, and as you heard, a chief legal counsel for the Department of the Air Force's AI Accelerator at MIT. I do appear today in my personal capacity. Views I present are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of Defense, the Department of the Air Force, or the Judge Advocate General's Corps. AI is both a catalyzing and transformative technology enabler. It accelerates traditional processes, but also creates entirely new ones. When the task AI is used for is criminal or harmful, the nature of AI becomes a threat multiplier. AI systems now automate decisions, model environments, and infer actions with unprecedented speed and scale. While they are designed to benefit society, their dual-use nature means they could also facilitate exploitation, fraud, and abuse. Even AI systems designed with legitimate use in mind can create harm if not carefully designed and deployed with safety, ethics, and accountability built in. Today, I'd like to briefly highlight how AI enables criminal activity, the gaps in current criminal law, and proactive steps Congress might take. First, how AI enables criminal activity. I'm seeing really 3 categories of AI developments that are of particular concern in this area. Computer vision, generative adversarial networks, or GANs, and large language models, or LLMs. Computer vision systems, which interpret visual data, are used to automate surveillance, identify targets, and even harvest personal data from breached documents to support identity theft and fraud. What enables real-time threat detection for public safety can be repurposed to stalk or blackmail individuals with chilling efficiency. GANs are capable of generating synthetic images, videos, and audio, better known in the public discourse as deepfakes. These tools allow the impersonation of public officials and private citizens alike. Multiple watchdogs and law enforcement agencies that have conducted longitudinal analysis on AI-generated child sexual abuse material, or CSAM, have reported rapid rises in the number of generated images shared online. Perhaps more concerning is that the increased capabilities and sophistication of generative AI models enable them to produce very realistic images. Generative AI tools are also used for extortion, grooming, and emotional coercion, often targeting children. Large language models, like those powering chatbots, are revolutionizing phishing, fraud, and social engineering, as well as misinformation. They engage victims in extended realistic conversations, target elderly people and vulnerable people in scams, or overwhelming financial institutions with thousands of tailored loan applications. They're also used to generate malicious code, making cybercrime accessible to individuals with no technical background. In short, deepfakes, AI-generated CSAM, and automated fraud are not theoretical threats. They are real, growing, and causing harm now. The barrier to entry to using AI to perpetuate or perpetrate is low. Anyone with a few seconds of your voice or image can create convincing synthetic content without coding or expensive hardware. The tools are cheap, accessible, and often unregulated. Tragically, gaps in current federal criminal law allow bad actors to use AI to profit at the expense of others, prey upon the vulnerable, or create mistrust with impunity. While there are statutes for wire fraud and child sexual abuse material, they do apply to many of the AI-enabled crimes. There are several significant gaps. More alarming still are emerging threats such as autonomous criminal activity, cross-border AI-enabled crime, and algorithmic market manipulation, for which criminal liability is unclear or altogether absent. There are a variety of strategies that this subcommittee, as well as Congress, can consider, including criminal law reform, that could define new offenses for malicious use of AI, particularly for deepfakes and AI CSAM. You could also provide sentencing enhancements for crimes aggravated by the use of AI tools when those tools augment the scale or impact of the harm, or make it more resource intensive to investigate and prosecute. You could also look at enabling AI safety and transparency requirements. And in conclusion, AI is a revolutionary enabler, but does not self-regulate. Bad actors choose to exploit it, the law must be ready. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Bowne. And we have your written testimony, which is more expansive, so remind everybody we have those. So appreciate that. Ms. Perumal, for you, we give you your 5 minutes now.
Chairman Biggs, Ranking Member McBath, and members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today and for creating this forum to discuss how AI is changing the landscape of cybercrime. I'm honored to share my perspective on how this technology is making these threats more accessible, more personalized, and more difficult to detect. My name is Zara Perumal. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Overwatch Data, a cyber threat intelligence company that uses AI to identify and analyze emerging threats in the cybercrime and fraud ecosystems. Through our work, we see every day how AI is used to both prevent and also to facilitate criminal activity. I'd like to focus my remarks today on how we see AI changing the threat landscape and what we can do about it through both education and innovation. AI is a powerful general purpose tool with a broad range of applications for criminal activity and for a broad range of threat actors. It can be used to learn how to commit crimes, to write code, craft realistic scam text messages, generate audio or voice clones, and of course, create deepfake images or videos. Across this wide range of malicious use, 3 trends stand out. First, AI is reducing the barriers to entry for cybercrime. Users can ask a chatbot, including ones explicitly designed for fraud, how to commit crimes. They can learn the technical skills they need to carry them out, and they can also use that to make their attacks more convincing and more effective. Second, it's challenging businesses. By subverting identity verification systems, AI can be used to generate a photo for a fake persona or profile. It can then be used to generate high-quality synthetic fake IDs. And then if they're asked to verify their identity, they can join a video call, swap their face with their fake photo, and verify their access to that business. This is a problem not just for the specific business that's being targeted, but it's a problem because it gives them a foothold from which they can hide their identity for the future next online crime that they'll carry out. The third thing we see is crimes are becoming far more personalized. For example, voice clones are used to target the elderly by calling a grandparent in what sounds like their grandchild's voice and claiming to be in the hospital and in need of money. Employment scams prey on young adults who are looking for their first job. And I think one of the most disturbing cases is the nudifying apps, which often target children. They turn ordinary photos into fake sexually explicit images, which are then used to bully, harass, and extort victims, in some cases driving them to suicide. This abuse is carried out to children, both by their classmates and by remote criminals. There's a lot of harm, there's a lot that's changing, but there's also a lot we can do. First, education and awareness can prevent and deter many of these harms. These crimes work because people don't expect them. If we invest in education across schools, workplaces, and communities, we can make these crimes less effective and more costly to carry out. Second, we have an opportunity to combat this with innovation. The same technology that is enabling these crimes can also be used to detect scams, find malware, and disrupt cybercrime. By supporting innovation and strengthening public-private partnerships, we can shift the technical advantage to the defenders. While AI enables crime to be more accessible, more personalized, and harder to detect, I remain optimistic. With the right investment in education and innovation, we can engage our whole society in building a future where AI expands access to opportunity, strengthens safety, and helps people spend more time on what matters. On a personal note, it's very exciting to me to see that Congress is addressing this issue and putting a spotlight on it. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vinsky, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Chairman Biggs, Ranking Member McBath, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union. I will address 2 issues this morning. First, it is crucial that our response to criminal uses of artificial intelligence adhere to the Constitution, civil rights, and civil liberties. Second, efforts by Congress and the administration must not inadvertently open the door for AI abuses, such as through a moratorium on state regulation of AI or continuing consolidation of federal data. With appropriate measures, Congress can ensure that AI is safe, effective, and consistent with our rights and liberties. First, Congress's measures to address criminal AI must comport with the Constitution, civil liberties, civil rights, and privacy. For example, traditional First Amendment activities do not lose their protections simply because artificial intelligence was used. Editorial content moderation using AI is not categorically exempted from the First Amendment's protections, and neither is commentary on politicians or candidates for office. Speech about politicians and candidates in particular lies at the heart of the First Amendment and enjoys special protection. Consequently, courts have readily and correctly overturned laws prescribing false speech about politicians and candidates. The emergence and use of AI does not change those core foundational constitutional precepts. Likewise, privacy concerns may arise from obligations imposed on platforms that host and distribute AI systems. Requirements or incentives to search users' communications, to restrict their publication of models, code, and data, to monitor or report their online activity, or to prohibit or undermine encryption, all increase governmental surveillance and in some circumstances may violate the Fourth Amendment. As the committee considers legislation addressing criminal uses of AI, we urge you to ensure that speech, privacy, and other important civil liberties are protected. Second, the recently rejected AI moratorium would have dramatically increased the risk of AI harms, including criminal and fraudulent activity. Similarly, the consolidation of federal data is creating an enormous risk of AI harms. The moratorium that was included in versions of the reconciliation package was sweeping, preempting state laws and local regulations that regulate AI for 10 years. Although moratorium included limited exemptions for some generally applicable laws, serious questions about the scope and workability of those exemptions remained. For example, dozens of states have passed laws regulating deep-fake non-consensual intimate imagery, often by amending existing statutes to clarify their application to generative AI. Similarly, Tennessee's Elvis Act extends legal protections to a person's voice, including a simulation of the voice. It is not clear if such laws, with their express application or clear intent to apply to AI, qualify as generally applicable. Moreover, in many instances, addressing AI's harms requires legislating specifically on AI. Establishment of an AI moratorium will jeopardize these efforts, giving bad actors a blank check. As Ranking Member McBath recognized, 17 Republican governors and members of both parties in both chambers of Congress opposed the moratorium before Congress stripped it from the reconciliation package in a 99-1 vote in the Senate. Of more immediate concern, consolidation of federal data creates a platform for supercharged AI-driven surveillance. And while data consolidation and sharing could potentially improve governmental operations in limited circumstances, efficiency should not be elevated over robust protection of our privacy. Otherwise, consolidation could risk the creation of vast and unaccountable surveillance platform capable of tracking citizens' activities, movements, and associations. Such a platform would be readily analyzable by large language models, machine learning, and other AI systems, such as black box policing algorithms used by federal law enforcement to ingest governmental data and predict who is likely to commit crimes. Data consolidation could lead to biometric information gathered by federal law enforcement or during air travel being readily accessible by other agencies. Records related to firearms might be accessible across the federal government, and IRS data reflecting contributions to organizations like the ACLU, the NAACP, the NRA, or the Heritage Foundation could be accessible to federal law enforcement without meaningful process. It is essential for Congress to block the creation of centralized government dossiers on each of us. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before this subcommittee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vinsky. Now, Mr. Redboard, you're recognized for your 5 minutes.
Chairman Biggs, Ranking Member McBath, members of the subcommittee. My name is Ari Redboard, and it's an honor to appear before you today on behalf of TRM Labs, where we work every day with law enforcement, financial institutions, and national security agencies to detect, investigate, and prevent illicit activity in the digital asset ecosystem. Before joining TRM, I spent about 11 years as a federal prosecutor at the U.S. Department of Justice, and later as an official in the U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence. In those roles, and now at TRM, I've seen one truth borne out time and time again. Criminals are often the earliest adopters of transformative technology. They were among the first to weaponize automobiles to move illicit goods across state lines, adopt pagers and cell phones to coordinate narcotics networks, utilize encrypted messaging apps to evade surveillance, and exploit cryptocurrencies to steal and transfer illicit proceeds at the speed of the internet. And now they are embracing artificial intelligence. We are rapidly approaching a world in which the bottleneck for crime is no longer human coordination, but computational power. When the marginal cost of launching a scam, phishing campaign, or extortion attempt approaches zero, the volume of attacks and their complexity will increase exponentially. We're not just seeing more of the same. We're seeing new types of threats that weren't possible before AI. Novel fraud typologies, hyper-personalized scams, deepfake extortion, autonomous laundering. The entire criminal ecosystem is shifting. That is why today's hearing matters. We must recognize that in the same way criminals are leveraging AI to disrupt and deceive, law enforcement and national security agencies must be empowered to use AI to defend and respond. This is not optional. It is foundational to preserving public trust and the social contract itself. If adversaries are deploying large-scale AI-enabled crime with impunity, and if the public no longer feels that government can protect them, we risk a breakdown of that trust. The consequences are not just individual harms, they are systemic, national security level threats to our institutions and civic cohesion. At TRM, we see this shift every day. Through Chain Abuse, our public scam reporting platform, we've tracked a 456% rise in AI-enabled scams, which often use deepfake technology, just in the last year. Ransomware actors are using AI to draft realistic phishing emails, identify vulnerable targets, and deploy malware that adapts to evade detection. On the laundering side, we're seeing bad actors use AI to automate and accelerate illicit money flows. We're also seeing fully autonomous fraud agents scraping personal data, launching scam campaigns, and even coordinating laundering operations. And most disturbing, we're seeing AI used to generate synthetic child sexual abuse material, fake but deeply harmful content traded online and weaponized in sextortion schemes. The solution to the criminal abuse of AI is not to ban or stifle the technology. It is to use it, and use it wisely. We must stay a step ahead of illicit actors by leveraging the same innovations they use for bad, for good. At TRM, we integrate AI at every layer of our platform to combat crime, using machine learning models and behavioral analytics to flag complex obfuscation techniques, trace illicit cryptocurrency transactions in real time, and identify emerging criminal typologies. We are developing and deploying AI-powered defense agents at scale to map illicit networks, triage threats, and surface early warning signs. These operational tools are already being used in the field to help global law enforcement agencies move faster, trace complex laundering schemes, and target the highest risk activity, often stopping criminal networks in their tracks before they can cause further harm. The future of crime will be defined by AI, but so will the future of enforcement. With the right investment, collaboration, and technology, we can meet this moment. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thanks so much. I appreciate all of you and your testimony, and very, very interesting. I hope we can get to some deep substance on it today. I now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Knott, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the witnesses, thank you for coming to testify today. This is sort of a novel topic, but as each of you have stated clearly, this is a very important topic, and development around the blockchain technology, AI technology, it's something that is sort of it's only going to become more prevalent and more dominant in just about every area of our life. And that's true here in America, that's true overseas. I think it's going to be one of those paramount moments that it's going to be sort of formative. Where were you before? Where were you after? And to that end, as a former prosecutor myself, when I was prosecuting, I came on at the very end of the AI-free crime. And I started to see how blockchain and cryptocurrencies and artificial intelligence was infiltrating every area of the criminal world. And to that end, Mr. Redboard, as the use of AI and blockchain technology does become more common and it does become more integrated in every avenue, there's obviously access from domestic actors that are criminal and international actors. There's really no border that's recognized. How does that impact the criminal infrastructure, as it were, when you look at domestic versus international crime and that relationship?
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, I feel like you would uniquely understand this as a former AUSA as well. You know, look, we both prosecuted cases in a world where there were, networks of shell companies and hawalas and high-value art and real estate used to launder funds. But today, as criminal actors are looking to blockchains and cryptocurrencies, we can trace every transaction on an open public ledger, right? There's no more bulk cash smuggling. There's TRM to track and trace the flow of funds. So I think what we see right now is this really interesting convergence between AI crime, as we're going to discuss today, and crypto. And really, primarily, crypto is often the means of value transfer in these different crimes, right? You see these deep fake scams where they are scams trying to get cryptocurrency from investors or users. They are ransomware actors who are supercharging attacks where cryptocurrency is the payment. The significant difference now as we're investigating crimes as prosecutors and law enforcement is that we can trace and track every one of those payments on open public ledgers, which allow us to do financial crime investigation really better than we've ever done it before.
Is there the ability, as you see it, to pinpoint with specificity criminal activity and, I would say more importantly, going back to the trust that we need in law enforcement, pinpointing criminal actors, because it's such a foggy space to many people? Can you pinpoint the actual criminal as opposed to just criminal activity?
It's a great question, and absolutely in many circumstances. What we're doing essentially at TRM is we're taking that raw blockchain data, right, those alphanumeric addresses, those crypto wallets, and we're associating them with real-world entities. Oftentimes it's terrorist financiers, ransomware actors, sanctions, for example, and that allows law enforcement to then take that data and track and trace the flow of funds to build out networks. Cartels are a great example of that today. I'm sorry.
Is there a risk that cartels, terrorist states could use legitimate constructs on the blockchain that are developed here in the United States for their own benefit, therefore taking advantage of a legitimate structure or a legitimate software that's developed here?
Absolutely. And I think the real challenge for regulators and policymakers is how to ensure that lawful users have access to those types of tools and yet stop bad actors from using them. And to me, the answer is, and the U.S. Treasury Department over the last few years has done a pretty good job on this, target the bad actors, the North Korean cyber criminals, the ransomware actors, the scammers, as opposed to necessarily the lawful services that they're using.
And is there a risk if we are too zealous in the prosecution? As a prosecutor, I'm all for strong law enforcement, but if we are too aggressive on the front end as this technology is developing, could we stifle domestic innovation here at home if we are too aggressive in prosecuting.
Absolutely. It is critical that we continue to focus on the bad actors in the space, which will allow the lawful ecosystem to grow, as opposed to the lawful services that are being used by bad actors. So absolutely, and really the key to all of this is to stop bad actors from leveraging the technology to allow this industry and this technology to grow.
And then briefly, what can we do in Congress to ensure that law enforcement has the resources to target the bad actors with specificity?
That's exactly right. I mean, today, what we really have across the U.S. government is a cadre of law enforcement agents that are really true experts, power users of blockchain intelligence tools. What we really need is that cadre to grow significantly. As bad actors are leveraging AI, as they're leveraging blockchain technology, every federal agent should have access to tools and the training necessary to sort of meet this new moment from a technology perspective.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Other members, I ran out of time. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. And without objection, I propose that we have a second round of questions. Seeing none, we will proceed in that fashion. And now I recognize Ranking Member Ms. McBath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just have to say that, and just in listening to each and every one of the witnesses, I mean, I'm just really amazed at the depth of the criminal usage of AI. Really, thank you so much for what you bring to the table today. But I do kind of want to talk a little bit about facial recognition. The Detroit Police Department reportedly conducted 129 facial recognition searches in 2020, and all on African American people. And the following year, 95.6% of the searches targeted Black people. Mr. Vinsky, how does the use of AI-enabled facial recognition comply with the Fourth Amendment's equal protection principles?
It raises serious concerns, and as far as I know, there's not been a clear holding that equal protection principles are violated by the use of facial recognition technology, but it certainly raises those concerns because of the disproportionate impact we've seen that technology have on protected classes, particularly, as you said, Black people, and in particular, Black men. And we've also engaged in civil rights litigation to defend individuals who have been wrongly identified by facial recognition technology. To a large extent, this is a matter of process, ensuring that police departments have appropriate processes in place so that there isn't reliance solely on a identification made by a facial recognition technology to bring in a suspect, that there isn't bias in lineups and things of that nature. But because of the certain threats that we've seen here and the ways that the technology can struggle in real world conditions, we have long stood by that there needs to be a moratorium for law enforcement uses of federal recognition technology.
Thank you for that. And it's just so interesting you should say that, because even on my phone, I have facial recognition, and sometimes it says, I don't recognize you. And I'm like, well, you know who I am. But of course, there's still problems with AI, and the technology still needs to be advanced. Mr. Vinsky, I'm going to ask you another question. What warrant requirements and limitations should be applied for facial recognition tools when they're used by law enforcement?
Well, as I said, our overall stance is that law enforcement should not be deploying the technology at all because of the underlying foundational issues of how it can struggle with a variety of protected classes in correctly identifying people, especially in real world conditions where lighting may not be ideal, where the surveillance footage may be grainy, and that can result in someone who is 8 months pregnant being apprehended for a crime where there clearly was not a pregnant person involved. The use of facial recognition technology may not necessarily implicate the Fourth Amendment, but as I said, it raises very serious concerns about perpetual surveillance, the ability of the federal government to identify individuals in public spaces going about their daily lives without any recourse, without any judicial oversight, and that is ultimately a policy question for legislators, city councils, and Congress to step up and regulate.
Thank you for that. And Dr. Bowne, in your experience, have you found that AI-enabled tools used by law enforcement are tested and evaluated before they are deployed to ensure that they are safe and effective?
So in my experience in law enforcement as a prosecutor, recently as a supervising prosecutor, The tools that are being used are certainly going to depend on the jurisdiction that's using them. And so states, counties, certainly federal government, from my experience in the Department of the Air Force, law enforcement organizations that are starting to use these tools are relatively new users. In the Air Force, any AI tool is supposed to go through rigorous test and evaluation standards to ensure that it results in a certain quantified reliability, and that's very challenging to do with some of these tools, particularly when you're talking about edge cases like African American men, when they are not found frequently in data sets. And so those questions are being asked. I don't see, in my experience, the type of rigorous standards being established across the board by regulators. And so until that happens, law enforcement is going to try to keep up, and it's tempting to do that, but there's likely to be some gaps there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlelady yields. Now recognize the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Lee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to our witnesses today. As a member of the House's bipartisan task force on artificial intelligence, I had the opportunity to work with members on both sides of the aisle to discuss a national approach to artificial intelligence that would encourage innovation, strengthen our global leadership, and also confront serious threats, including those like you all have been discussing here today that involve criminal misuse of this technology. Today's hearing, among other things, highlights one of the most urgent of those threats, which is the exploitation of children through AI. From synthetic child abuse materials to predatory chatbots to real-time location spoofing, we're seeing criminals use AI to expand both the scale and sophistication of their crimes. But AI can also, we know, be part of the solution. In cases like Operation Renewed Hope, AI helped federal agents identify and rescue minor victims who might otherwise have never been found. So one of the things that we're interested in doing is ensuring that law enforcement, child protection nonprofits, and trusted partners in the private sector have access to effective, responsible AI tools and the legal clarity to use them. It's about stopping criminals, saving lives, protecting children, and ensuring that we're doing our part to help technology be a force for good. So on that subject, Ms. Perumal, I'd like to follow up with you, and I'd like to know, what would you recommend Congress prioritize to better equip law enforcement with the tools they need to stay ahead of AI-enabled threats?
First of all, thank you so much for the question. I think a few things come to mind. One is strengthening public and private partnerships. I think the more that we have the opportunity to share information across industry and government, what the threats we're seeing is incredibly helpful. I also think making it easier to share technology and share the innovation. I think, frankly, it can sometimes be difficult, especially as small businesses trying to figure out how to share that technology, which makes a delay, so that as you have a new way that we can maybe find something like trafficking or better detect AI-generated harm, it can be difficult to then deploy that. So I think anything that is to improve that public-private partnership would be incredibly helpful.
And are there specific legislative or funding priorities that you or your clients have identified that you think would be impactful?
Yeah, I think so. A few things that are kind of we see with our clients. One is there's a big challenge to identity in terms of online identity. So AI-generated agents can more explicitly scrape, use websites for fraud. And then on the other side, you also see things like ID fraud, where people are using this to hide their identity and commit online crimes. I think that's an area that the industry is generally trying to adapt and respond to, because that's how so much of fraud and scams and extortion is then carried out. I think another thing that comes to mind is to the earlier point on innovation. If it's easier to kind of share and collaborate, that would be, I think, incredibly helpful for us in the private sector.
And I'd like to go back to you, Mr. Redboard. You said something in your remarks that I thought was really interesting, that AI is also the future of enforcement. I believe your words were invest, collaborate, and we can be more effective. I would like to hear, in your view, what are the most urgent risks posed by AI to national security and public safety, and what would you like to add about what we can be doing in Congress?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Really, what we see AI doing today is supercharging criminal activity that we've seen exist for some time. So now you don't need ransomware affiliates because you can have AI agents that are automatically deploying malware. We're seeing cyber attacks, at scale by North Korea and other types of cyber actors. And then we're seeing the laundering of the funds that are stolen move faster than ever before. As I mentioned in my testimony, we've seen a 456% increase from last year in scam activity involving AI. We have to move as fast as the criminals. So when we think about these issues at TRM, it's can we move faster? How can we use AI the same way they're moving funds to track and trace those funds in order to ultimately seize them back? So when you ask, it's the tools and the training to ensure that every single law enforcement and national security professional have access to the same tools that many cyber criminals are using today, and obviously the funding necessary to support that, as well as the training.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and I appreciate the testimony that we've had. I have a different line of questions for the next round, but things you've said in your testimony and what I've heard in the first round makes me want to ask some specific areas. You don't have a lot of time to respond, so I'm going to ask, and because I want a quick response from every one of you. So one of you mentioned the Elvis Act in Tennessee, which prohibits the simulation of Elvis's voice. Basically, that's how that generated. What about any other person? So I'm thinking, what if you do it, if there's a deep fake of any other public figure, and you have that person say something that's pernicious, something that's bad, something that's politically inflammatory, whatever, what do we have laws in place that would prohibit that? Or is it just wild, wild west? We'll start with you, Mr. Redboard.
Sort of slightly more broadly, I would say that we have laws in place that absolutely cover a lot of these areas, but we're going to need to add AI to a lot of them. When I think about these issues, for example, when you talk about these types of scam activity that are being supercharged by AI, we have wire fraud statutes to address them.
Right, and we'll get into that too, but I'm talking specific. This is a specific case. So let's say you have a public figure and you have them say something that's totally outrageous, it's totally deep faked. You can't tell, the average person can't tell. If that person if that language was attributed to that person elsewhere, you might have a libel. I mean, it'd be a civil claim. You might have a civil claim of libel or defamation of character or something like that. Does that, in your opinion, exist when someone manipulates a deep fake to do something like that?
I think it would require adding additive measures to what we have today.
Mr. Vinsky.
That sort of speech lies at the core of the First Amendment's protections. It's commentary on politicians. And so, for example, when
But it's not commentary on politicians. It's if, let's say with maliciousness, with malice, that's the word I'm looking for. With malice, you say that Andy Biggs said X, Y, this. That's just horrible. You put it in the New York Times, and you did it because you wanted to harm me.
And if you take, for example, the Republican National Committee's deepfake about President Biden announcing a draft for Ukraine, that's commentary on public events. But, of course, existing exceptions to the First Amendment still apply to AI. And that means...
So that's what I wanted to get at.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to hear from you, whether something like a defamation,
Yeah.
like
Defamation
New York Times
subject
does, which is why I
to-
specifically used New York Times.
That's exactly right.
Ms. Perumal, same question.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the legal side, so I can talk more about the technology, but I do see that it is challenging detection.
Right,
on it.
thanks. Dr. Bowne?
So there's this inherent friction that we see, and I agree with both Mr. Redboard and Mr. Vinsky, that what he describes here is likely protected under First Amendment. You have
Unless there's malice.
with malice. Now, there's legal protection certainly from a civil right of action for if it were to be
So let's, not to interrupt, I don't want to be rude to interrupt, but I do want to interrupt. What my question is, let's expand it. A true deep fake is so persuasive, you can't tell the difference side by side of me over here and the deep fake. We've had examples of parents, grandparents, they can't tell the difference between the deep fake and the voice of the kid. They look the same, they act the same, they're remarkable. How do I have protection, for instance, from someone doing that? I mean, and this is going to lead into the CSAM, which I was hoping I would have enough time to get to that, because it's the same type of deal where you see CSAM, which is so persuasive and sick and disgusting, that's all AI generated. But can you, and we know this, I mean, you mentioned the one of the Ukraine thing. What remedy does someone have when they're a victim of this kind of generative AI?
Mr. Chairman, if it were to fall under the statute of like wire fraud, so you look at the intent of what's behind it, those are protections there. If it's to create misinformation, you certainly articulated the challenge and the potential harm that may not be outside of the law. And so there are gaps in protection when you're facing particularly harmful activity using deepfakes.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be talking about that in the future. So that ends the first round of questioning, and now for the second round of questioning, recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Knott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I got to say, I'm happy to have a second round so soon. I wish more members would show up because this is important. But selfishly, I'm enjoying the conversation. And all of you have basically indicated what was stated, either directly or indirectly, that computational power and ability will dictate sort of the new criminal landscape. And obviously, AI will supercharge this. The landscape is going to be forever changed. And I want to ask each of you, how far are we from having autonomous criminal behavior? Doctor, start with you. Go in order down the line.
It's a fantastic question. So
thank you.
My assessment is we're there. We have plenty of autonomously. Certainly from a bad actor that is using AI and using the autonomous features of those models to perpetuate crimes, we're certainly there. The scale, the sophistication, the speed that are created by using AI-enabled models can certainly from committing scams at scale, targeting personally, finding cyber vulnerabilities. That is all happening already.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're definitely seeing that now. It's the beginning of what's happening. It's being used for more simple crimes. I think we see different uses. You might think of simple bots that text people and send us these annoying scam text messages. Those are now can use AI and automate by pulling breached or leaked data about you. And then similarly with computer use agents, they're starting to fill out forms, but there's a large opportunity for those to get much more sophisticated.
And I think relatedly on the civil side, we're seeing rapid advancement of artificial intelligence that's used to make decisions about who can get a loan, who has access to a house, and things of that nature. Sure. And often in many cases, that will output a score that humans are largely deferring to. So artificial intelligence has reached the point where it is having an outsized effect on our lives, not just because of criminal activity, but because it affects so many important sectors as well.
Yep.
Thank you for the question. We are there today. But AI is not dominating criminal activity, and I think that's in large part why this hearing is so important in this moment to start having this conversation. And this is really why at TRM over the last year or so, we have focused a lot of our attention, particularly how can we build AI tools that enable us to move faster? Because while we're not quite there yet, we're getting very, very close.
What's going to be required to make it responsive
That's
to meet
exactly
the threat?
Right.
What will be required? I'm asking.
Sorry.
In terms of capacity, in terms of private sector investment, in terms of public investment? Give me a broad picture of what's going to be needed.
It's a great way. It's all of it, and I know public-private partnerships were talked about, and it's often sort of this trite way as something to discuss. But really, what it has to be is the private sector building the tools that government can ultimately leverage to move as fast as the cyber criminals.
And in your opinion, is the law lagging this new frontier, or are the existing criminal laws sufficient to protect the marketplace and victims like Mr. Biggs talked about?
It'll absolutely be a combination of both. I think it'll be important when you talk about CSAM, which I know we'll focus on ensuring that the federal sentencing guidelines meet the AI moment for that. We will have need AI-specific criminal laws, but I will say that a lot of the laws we have today, wire fraud, bank fraud, those types of laws, these types of disinformation investigations certainly will include AI.
And jurisdictionally, how do you see AI factoring into content, actions, vehicles designed overseas that penetrate into the American market? How do we protect against that in a jurisprudence sense?
I think it's a challenge. Look, the nature of crypto, the nature of AI, the nature of technology is it's global and cross-border. Yep. And we, in large part, we want to make sure that the innovation is happening here. And that's why it's so important that as we have these conversations, we're walking that line between stopping bad actors but not stifling innovation in this critical moment. Just like the internet was born and created in the United States, we need to ensure that that is true for AI technology as well.
And if I may add to that, Representative, as we think about ways that existing legal frameworks need to adapt to this rapidly evolving challenge, a multi-jurisdictional approach is the right approach, not just at the federal level, but also internationally, and of course with states. And we've talked a little bit about the moratorium that was included in versions of the reconciliation package. The House did exempt criminal laws, but often in many cases, civil penalties will be a necessary complement, for example, in addressing non-consensual imagery at high schools.
One more question for the panel real quickly. What can parents do to protect their children from this type of landscape?
As a parent myself, I think education on the risk is certainly important. I think that's something that is the public sector can lead on. Law enforcement can lead on, similar to drugs, tobacco. The risk of AI, whether it's for scams, whether it's for CSAM, whatever harms, they certainly impact children as well.
I definitely agree. I think, especially for the CSAM harms, giving their children awareness that something like this might happen to you, it might have nothing to do with anything you did, and here's how you can reach out. I think sharing that awareness, because they target the fact that people feel shame when they have no reason to. So I think that would be really helpful.
Thank you.
As a former teacher, parents are an integral part in helping kids navigate the world, and education and talking with kids about the new risks that are emerging are critical.
Thank you.
Education is absolutely critical. As a parent of middle school and high school age kids, I appreciate this. One more point that I do think is important here, though, is that we need to ensure that they also know how to leverage it, not that they're just afraid of it.
Sure.
I think their success in large part in the rest of their life will depend on their ability to leverage and engage with this technology. And I think it's absolutely so critical that on the one hand, we protect them against the harms, but also ensure that they're really able to use it and leverage it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yields, and we recognize now the ranking member, Ms. McBath.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And once again, as you can see, we are quite alarmed as to what we're hearing today, so thank you very much. I want to go back upon and touch upon once again what the chairman was just asking, the question that he asked about. And in specific, each of you, if you can just kind of tell us in a nutshell, you're expressing to us that there are gaps. There are gaps in legislation. There are gaps in things that we need to do here in Congress to make sure that there are protections that are enforcing and preventing these kinds of deep fakes and all that we're talking about today. So can you give us an idea? Tell us what kinds of legislation are going to be extremely important for us to put in place to prevent these kinds of gaps that you just expressed to us that there are today. Mr. Bowne, Dr. Bowne, would you start, please?
Ma'am, so one of the gaps may be closed soon. There's opportunity. The HR 1283, which was introduced by this committee, would amend Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 2252 Alpha, which is the statute that covers child pornography. and CSAM. The bill is intended to amend that statute to include AI generate CSAM within the definition and coverage under that criminal statute. And so there's the Title 18, the criminal statutes that may need to be amended, both in content on what is covered, what is criminalized, but also potentially in the sentencing guidelines, as Mr. Redboard mentioned. And then there's, as the chairman explained, and in his questions, there is a gap as well on the civil side that there might not be a cause of action for that non-criminal because even that amendment that's proposed in HR 1283 still has to be constitutional. There's First Amendment protections even on things that would normally be objectionable.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Redboard, please.
Thank you very much. I provided about 5 suggestions in my written testimony, but I'll just focus on one for purposes of this answer. It is absolutely critical that agencies at every level have access to modern investigative capabilities, including blockchain analytics platforms integrated with AI, media authentication tools, as we've talked about, and AI-enabled investigative tools. Congress should allocate dedicated funding for these tools along with specialized training programs.
Thank you. And Mr. Vinsky.
I think awareness of where existing law can apply to criminal activity is critical in navigating this space. For example, 2258A has been extended and prosecutions have been brought for simulated CSAM material created regarding a specific identifiable child using AI technology. So I agree with Mr. Redboard that education, providing training, defense, and funding for critical infrastructure for schools and others to educate students and other vulnerable populations about the threats of AI will be key, and also to shore up their own cybersecurity infrastructure.
Mr. Vinsky, I want to go back to something that you did touch upon, though. You did touch upon the moratorium on state and local AI, which actually failed. That last attempt did fail, but the Republican chair of the House Energy and Commerce Committee has already vowed to continue to pursue it, even as he acknowledged that federal legislation setting standards on AI is still years away. As we work to develop that legislation, what principles or proposals should we consider?
I think one thing I would look to, and Representative Lee already referenced it, was the House AI Task Force final report from the last Congress. That was a thoughtful sort of compendium of the various issues around AI regulation at the federal level. And it recognized that preemption in particular is a sensitive issue, and it doesn't need to be all or nothing, that there is a range of tools that can be used in adjusting what is the appropriate area for preemption, what is the appropriate amount of preemption, in order to ensure that states have significant latitude to address these harms in a timely manner, which of course is beneficial for Congress as this committee looks at what works and what does not.
Okay, thank you. And one last question, Dr. Bowne. How can public agencies use the procurement process to ensure that AI systems they want to acquire are safe and effective?
So they certainly articulate what the problem is and what the need is to create a demand signal for private industries, for R&D, for academia, to do the research that is needed. And so the procurement system is a fantastic way for federal agencies or state agencies to ensure that the standards are being met and that the capabilities are there and are being focused on in the development and the research in the public sector or in the private sector and in academia.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request to enter into the record a statement from Barry Friedman, Faculty Director of the Policing Project at New York University School of Law, dated July 16, 2025. Also enter into the record a statement for record dated July 16, 2025 from Public Citizen regarding the growing threat of criminal exploitation through AI. And then also last but not least, unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement from Keith Kupris-Schmid, Chief Executive Officer of the Copyright Alliance, dated June 13, 2025.
Without objection.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, for his 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for calling this hearing. It's a hugely important topic. And, we have often seen this arms race develop between criminals and law enforcement when it comes to the use of technology, where criminals innovate and law enforcement has to innovate in turn, and it's a matter of just trying to sort of keep up. But with AI, it's a totally different ballgame in the sense that the development of new capabilities is happening so quickly, and the nature of those capabilities is often emergent and surprises even the people who train the systems. And the ways in which they are being applied is equally unpredictable. To me, it seems that integrating AI into law enforcement operations, it's not just a tool at this point, it's absolutely essential. But it's a tremendous challenge and requires a lot of expertise. So it seems to me that we need to be thinking very seriously about how we can have coordination and how we can make cutting-edge tools available to law enforcement across the country. And so I wanted to ask both Mr. Redboard and Ms. Perumal, if I'm saying that correctly, about your thoughts on this. I know that you have a law enforcement background, and I know that you actually worked at Google, and I believe it was just a couple days ago that Google announced that its cybersecurity AI platform for the first time detected and defeated a software vulnerability in the wild that was known to malevolent actors. So maybe if you could both address kind of the role of the public and private sector in meeting this challenge.
Thank you so much for the question. And it's absolutely critical that the public and private sector work together on this, as the question noted. Look, every federal law enforcement agency in the US today is using tools like TRM to track and trace the flow of funds, to automate tracing when it comes to cryptocurrency, to leverage AI tools in that respect. But the reality is that it's still a handful of investigators that have this expertise and training. And as we move from crime on city streets to crime on blockchains and in cyberspace, we're going to need every agent and investigator, not just federal, but state and local, to also have access to these types of tools and training. And as you mentioned, cyber criminals are now using this more and more, and will eventually be using this at scale. Every agent investigator who is investigating these cases, tracking them, needs to be moving as quickly. So I would say tools and training primarily. And then the other piece is really true public-private partnership, where FBI and IRSCI and HSI and others are working closely with the private sector to share information to move as quickly as possible.
Thanks very much.
Well, thank you for the question, and I love that you're following the vulnerability discovery. That's awesome. I think, to your point, the criminal ecosystem is using this to scale their offense. We have to use it to scale our defense and to make that more effective if we're going to keep up. And there's a lot of ways we can do that, from better detecting malware to better understanding the tools and tactics they're using, better detecting the scam messages. I think if we can enable, as I said, the public-private partnerships, which we keep repeating, but I think if we can make it easier and much faster to adapt as the criminal ecosystem adapts, that makes us a lot more effective. And there's so many opportunities. If you even think about all the reports of scams that maybe we already have access to, or law enforcement has access to, if we can just go through that data and find the trends, using AI to speed up and scale investigations is a way that we can really keep pace with the criminal ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. One more thing I would add to that is that, historically, and I was a prosecutor for a long time, we investigate specific cases, right? There's an instance of crime, and we need to investigate that specific case. What this technology really allows us to do is build out networks to understand crime typologies, to understand sort of where the threat actors are and how they are engaging and what they would potentially do next. And it really, it's an extraordinary moment when it comes to not just law enforcement, but how to disrupt adversaries from a national security perspective. So I think with this technology, and I think you got to this in your question, really enables is not just sort of the one-off harm that's been done to an individual, but how do we build out networks of cartels, of fentanyl dealers, of scam networks in Southeast Asia and elsewhere. And this technology, connected to blockchain intelligence, really allows us to do a lot of that today.
Interesting. So you can address crime much more systematically, in a more efficient way and more preemptively.
And we even see that today in the actions that are coming from the U.S. Treasury and Department of Justice, where they're going after networks. They're doing civil forfeitures. There was a very large civil forfeiture complaint filed about 2 weeks ago by the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. against $225 million involved in pig butchering scams. It was a network. So we're seeing them use it today.
Very interesting. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. It seems, I think, there is a role perhaps for us to play in supporting these public-private partnerships and in facilitating the training and access to this knowledge and these resources in law enforcement across the country. I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back, and I'm going to recognize myself for my 5 minutes here. But I would suggest that this is, as we started off, I said this would be the first of its kind. And I meant that we're going to have to keep pushing this. So I think maybe a week ago, Elon Musk announced Grok 4. And he talked about artificial intelligence. And Grok 4 is going to have the intelligence, it already has beyond a PhD, engineering, science, genius, etc. Artificial superintelligence. And we've touched on it lightly here today, using different terms, but I guess my question is, at what point do we no longer see computational decision-making with a human first mover, and you have a algorithmically iterative process that essentially, and we're there in some extent now, but we're not totally there because human interaction still is the first mover. But at some point, it won't be a human that's the first mover anymore. It'll be the algorithm itself. And how long before we get there? How do we get there and prevent the crime and provide the deterrence that is necessary? And so for the hypothetical I'll give you, how long before adjudicating whether there's probable cause or not for a search warrant or arrest warrant is merely algorithmically sustained, as opposed to having a human make that determination? So with that bizarre question, but acknowledging that we are actually moving so rapidly that we probably thought by 2050 you'd be getting to artificial superintelligence, but it looks like maybe before 2030 you're going to be in artificial superintelligence. Dr. Bowne. And then we'll go down the whole panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So certainly a thought-provoking exercise. I'm glad we're still at the point where it's an exercise and not reality, but I recognize that we may not be far from there. Before we get to artificial general intelligence, or before we get to certainly artificial superintelligence, and those are still theoretical, not a foregone conclusion, there is this very powerful and very rapidly increasing agentic AI, and where we start to see some of what you described already taking place at a admittedly lesser extent than what we would if it were true AGI or ASI. But we still have algorithms that are making decisions on behalf of humans that are able to do so at speed and often at a scale that it certainly makes it difficult for the human agent to observe and to be a part of. And so it really depends on how much trust, how much authority we provide those agents, and what those models, how are they fine-tuned to limit that. And so I do believe, as you said, Mr. Chairman, this is the first of hopefully many, having some of those industries, some of those private sector companies describe that so that this subcommittee and Congress can ensure that they are able to predict and know and set up those guardrails if necessary to limit what you're concerned about.
Ms. Perumal. And since we only have a minute left, each of you get 20 seconds.
Thank you. Very interesting question. I think we see AI agents making simple decisions today. I think for more complex decisions, as the models can do more complex reasoning in the next few years, it really should come down to how important is the decision, and then what transparency and explainability we can get from the model, and how much human oversight is necessary. I think it really depends on how risky that individual decision is where we should hopefully see the rollout for these different autonomous decisions.
I'm going to build directly on that. The role of AI is a choice, and laws passed in Texas, the National Security Memorandum that governs national security uses of AI, say that certain things are off limits for artificial intelligence. And you mentioned probable cause. That strikes me as a core foundational tenet of due process that should probably be truly a human activity. And that is a policy choice that we make of what will be human, what will be AI, and where will humans be in the loop.
I've never seen anything move as fast as this has moved in my lifetime. And while I don't have a great answer for how long, it's certainly coming. And if I could leave this committee with anything today, it's that we need to move as quickly, building the tools, working with this body in order to provide the right laws there. As an old school prosecutor, I'm happy with judges still making decisions around probable cause. But I do think we really need to ensure that we also are using the tools defensively to meet this moment.
Great. Thank you all for being here. My time has expired. There's so much more to cover with this. And as like I say, it's just the first, and hopefully we'll get back together soon and continue this. Please feel free to contact myself or the ranking member. I'm assuming that's okay. Absolutely. She says that's okay because we want to have a dialogue and see where there's holes, where there's gaps. Let us know. We want to do stuff that's preventative without being constraining, if that's possible. So thank you. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
As ranking member, I agree that Congress needs to examine digital assets as a whole and look forward to discussing the tax treatment of digital assets, including cryptocurrency, with you all today. I think it's really, really important that we as Americans lead in this area. I can tell you that over the 14 years that I have been in Congress, the rate in which digital assets have gone from niche blog posts to the front page of global publications is something to behold. It is undeniable that digital assets, including cryptocurrency, have transformed digital payment and investment. As digital assets take a larger role on the world stage, it is important that we protect consumers, we remove bad actors, and that we ensure fair tax treatment for all. We must work to strengthen rather than weaken the guardrails in place to protect Americans. Earlier this year, President Trump launched his own meme coin. The media has reported that these coins have no intrinsic value, but have netted him over $300 million in fees. It is alarming that 80% of the coins market were held by the Trump family and its partners. I came to Congress to fight for families in my rural community of Alabama, and not to further aggrandize the president. I think all of us could agree that it's pretty alarming that anything that we do will have direct consequences on our president and his family. And it's something I think that we need to put guardrails on for the future. With that, I am excited to hear from all of our witnesses, and I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you. All right, our witnesses. Summer Mercer is CEO of Blockchain Association. Sarah Riley is Vice President and Senior Counsel at Fidelity Investments. Allison Manjuro is Head of Staking Policy and Industrial Affairs at the Crypto Council for Innovation. Jason Santos, I was sort of close, is Director of Policy at Coin Center. Corey Frey is Director of Investment Protection and Consumer at the Consumer Federation of America. Freyer. See, that's why I wanted her to introduce you. All right, you each have 5 minutes, and then when we get to questions, we'll go back and forth and see the education of members of Congress and our staff. Please have it.
Thank you, Chairman Schweikert, Ranking Member Sewell, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Summer Mersinger, and I'm CEO of Blockchain Association. We're the leading collective voice of the digital asset industry in the United States, representing more than 130 of the most innovative job creators and stakeholders in the blockchain economy. Our members, many who are startups and small businesses, are developing the next generation of the internet and financial infrastructure here in America. From software developers and infrastructure providers to investment firms and trading platforms, we are proud to advocate for the responsible growth of this transformative technology. To ensure that growth and innovation happens here in the U.S., Congress must provide clear, workable tax rules for digital assets. Our tax code wasn't built for this kind of innovation, and the result is costly confusion that harms consumers, small businesses, and overwhelms the IRS. Right now, every digital asset transaction, no matter how small, is a taxable event. For everyday users, this is unmanageable. For businesses, critical blockchain activities like staking or token upgrades lack clear guidance, creating legal risk and pushing development offshore. The situation is made worse by burdensome new reporting requirements. The IRS itself says it expects up to 8 billion new 1099 DA forms annually. By our estimate, complying will cost the U.S. taxpayers around $250 billion and add 4 billion hours of paperwork each year. To put this in perspective, this single rule could increase the entire federal paperwork burden for American taxpayers and businesses by approximately 33%. Our industry supports tax compliance, but it must be achievable. We respectfully request that the committee provide much-needed clarity and support American innovation by considering the following priorities. First is exempt de minimis gains and losses from taxation. Clarify the character, source, and timing of income for mining and staking rewards. Clarify certain digital asset transactions are non-recognition events, including wrapping and unwrapping a digital asset. Adopt legislation to allow staking in the U.S. digital asset investment structures. Extend the mark-to-market accounting method currently used by commodity dealers and traders to digital assets. Establish a new safe harbor for foreign persons trading in digital assets. Provide non-recognition treatment for gains or losses upon the digital asset transfers in connection with qualifying loan transactions. Allow charitable deductions for digital assets easily valued or regularly traded without requiring qualified appraisal. Reconsider the provisions of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that create barriers to the development of the digital asset industry. Allow digital assets to be held as investment assets and retirement accounts. Ensure that any update to wash sale and constructive sales rules for digital assets only pass as part of a comprehensive digital asset tax package. Make research and development eligibility for blockchain development explicit. Digital assets represent a transformative opportunity for the American economy, but without modern, fair, and practical tax rules, we risk losing that opportunity. Blockchain Association and its members are eager and willing partners in this effort. We stand ready to serve as a resource to you and your staff. Thank you for your time and leadership on this critical issue, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Chairman Schweikert, Ranking Member Sewell, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to share Fidelity's perspective on digital assets and the importance of implementing a modernized tax framework. We also appreciate Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Neal's focus on this issue. My name is Sarah Riley, and I'm Senior Tax Counsel at Fidelity Investments based in Boston, Massachusetts. For over 75 years, Fidelity has been customer-obsessed. Where our customers are committed to investing, we build solutions to support them and believe a customer-centric regulatory model is critical. We have nearly $6 trillion in assets under management and are one of the country's leading workplace benefits providers and America's largest IRA provider. Fidelity offers a unique perspective in the digital asset space. As one of the only established large financial institutions in the digital asset ecosystem, we are a bridge between traditional finance and digital assets. We began research and development on digital assets in 2014 and have offered custody and trading of Bitcoin since 2018 to support our institutional customers' needs. 3 years ago, we launched Fidelity Crypto for retail investors, which provides custody and trading of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. In 2024, following SEC approval, we launched 2 exchange-traded products, the Fidelity Wise Origin Bitcoin Fund and the Fidelity Ethereum Fund. These products provide greater optionality and ease of access for our customers who wish to have investment account exposure to digital assets. Our commitment to digital assets is firm-wide. We believe blockchain technology and digital assets will play a transformative role in the future of finance. Similar to other pivotal technological advances such as the internet, this technology is an integral part of the evolution of the financial sector. And for that future to be realized, we need a clear fit-for-purpose regulatory framework, one that fosters innovation, reflects the unique attributes of digital assets, and above all, protects investors. We are encouraged by the recent progress in Congress toward establishing such a framework, but a modern regulatory framework is not complete without a modernized tax code. To support the growth of the digital asset ecosystem, including stablecoins and decentralized finance, tax rules must keep pace with technological innovation. While digital assets may share characteristics with other types of assets, they are distinguishable in ways that necessitate change to the existing tax framework. Further, the use cases for digital assets are expansive, including being used for payments for goods and services, investments, governance, and for decentralized finance applications. This breadth demonstrates the need for thoughtful and tailored tax rules. The crypto industry urgently needs clear, consistent, and administrable tax rules. Tax certainty supports industry growth and encourages business activity to grow domestically rather than offshore. In the absence of comprehensive guidance, taxpayers and institutions are left to rely on general tax principles and sub-regulatory guidance which fail to address the full scope of new challenges and complexities introduced by digital assets. This uncertainty has real consequences. It undermines taxpayer confidence, it results in inconsistent taxpayer outcomes, it makes compliance more challenging, it pushes innovation offshore. For example, ambiguity around the sourcing of digital asset staking rewards has already led to a significant shift of staking activity outside of the U.S. Tax legislation is needed to both update the existing code sections that should address digital assets, such as those relating to securities lending, mark-to-market elections, and U.S. trading safe harbors, and to deal with novel concepts in the digital asset space, such as staking and stablecoins. Most tax code provisions were written before the broad adoption of digital assets and thus do not specifically contemplate the tax treatment of digital assets. For example, despite the importance of staking for the integrity, security, and success of proof-of-stake blockchains such as Ethereum, important tax issues relating to staking are not adequately addressed by either the tax code or existing sub-regulatory guidance. The tax treatment of these activities and income generated creates novel tax questions that cannot be resolved solely by analogy to existing parts of the code, including how such rewards are sourced, among other questions. In many instances, digital assets face disparate treatment as compared with traditional investment assets such as securities and commodities, despite the growing role of digital assets in our financial system. The inconsistency in tax treatment under various tax rules results in adverse outcomes for taxpayers and the industry overall. Additionally, modernization of the tax code would support increased compliance and reduce abuse. To support the industry, provisions should be updated to specifically address digital assets. On behalf of Fidelity and the millions of customers we serve, we appreciate the invitation to share our views and contribute to this important dialogue. We applaud congressional efforts to identify and address the gaps in the existing tax framework to support U.S. growth in the digital asset industry, and we look forward to continuing to work with the committee to implement a modernized tax framework for digital assets. I look forward to your questions.
Chairman Schweikert, Ranking Member Sewell, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on how the United States can ensure that digital asset policy is built for the 21st century. I am pleased to represent the Crypto Council for Innovation, a global alliance of leaders across the digital asset space. We are active here in the US, as well as in the EU, UK, and Asia Pacific, and represent some of the largest and most prominent companies in the space. I am particularly grateful for the engagement and leadership of so many on this subcommittee. The digital asset sector has evolved significantly over the past decade into a dynamic and expanding ecosystem that now touches payments, capital markets, identity, and data infrastructure. Congress is already advancing foundational legislation to address market structure and stablecoins. While the U.S. has made encouraging strides toward a broader regulatory framework, gaps in tax policy continue to hinder compliance, investment, and enforcement. CCI and I respectfully submit that now is the time to modernize the tax code to reflect the realities of the digital economy. Crypto is more than just a new asset class. The technology on which it is based is the foundational layer for a more open, efficient, and inclusive digital economy. It is also not a monolith. Digital assets are transforming how we transfer value, access financial services, verify digital identity, and much more. While most are familiar with Bitcoin, the digital asset ecosystem has expanded far beyond it. Similar to the way that the internet makes possible apps that enable ride-sharing, e-commerce, and much more, programmable blockchains are powering the next generation of decentralized applications. These systems enable faster, cheaper, and more equitable financial tools that empower individual ownership and control over data and assets. Staking is the engine that powers these blockchains. It's how proof-of-stake networks like Ethereum, Solana, and Avalanche stay secure and functional. While it varies from blockchain to blockchain, these systems rely on token holders who temporarily commit or stake their tokens for the chance to verify transactions and add new blocks to the chain, keeping the network accurate and current across the entire network of globally distributed computers. In return, they are rewarded with new tokens. In January 2019, when I started working on staking policy, the total value staked across proof-of-stake networks was approximately $50 million. Today, over $660 billion is staked across dozens of networks that provide the infrastructure for today's use cases and ones that haven't yet been imagined. Staking is no longer a niche activity. It is the infrastructure layer of the new digital economy. A functioning digital economy requires a functioning tax framework. And right now, when it comes to staking, the process that secures most modern blockchains, we don't have one. Tax policy is not an isolated issue. It is a core pillar of the broader legal infrastructure needed to support digital asset innovation. As Congress considers stablecoin legislation and market structure reform, it is imperative that tax modernization moves in parallel to avoid inconsistencies and ensure that the U.S. is the crypto capital of the world. My written testimony includes greater detail, but in the interest of time, I will highlight 3 key recommendations for the development of a tax framework for digital assets. First, to promote responsible adoption of digital assets for payments, Congress should enact a de minimis exclusion for small personal use digital asset transactions. Second, activities essential to securing and maintaining blockchain networks, like staking and mining, should not be discouraged by overly complex or burdensome tax treatment. Staking and mining rewards should be treated like all other created property. Third, a digital asset-specific safe harbor should be created for foreign investors, similar to those for securities and commodities. Income from staking should qualify as passive income for tax-exempt and publicly traded partnerships, and grantor trust and other ETP structures should be updated to accommodate the staking of digital assets to make our products competitive. The U.S. should want the next generation of internet infrastructure built here, not overseas. But right now, tax uncertainty is one of the biggest reasons developers and firms are looking elsewhere. If we want scalability for stablecoins, decentralized finance, or any of the other applications built on top of proof-of-stake networks, including the ones we haven't yet imagined, we must get the tax policy right. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before you today. I look forward to your questions.
Chairman Schweikert, Ranking Member Sewell, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jason Samansato, and I'm the Director of Policy at Coin Center, an independent nonprofit research and advocacy center focused on the public policy issues facing cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrency networks allow individuals to transfer value directly to others anywhere in the world without relying on a third party. Since the introduction of Bitcoin in 2009, millions of people, including millions of US taxpayers, have used these networks to send peer-to-peer payments and conduct a wide variety of other activity. Yet the tax treatment of these activities is often uncertain, impracticable, and in some cases fundamentally misaligned with well-established principles of tax law. Coin Center has long called for sensible and fair tax policy for cryptocurrencies that recognizes the novel manner in which these assets are created and used. Our goal is not to seek special treatment for cryptocurrency transactions, but rather to ensure they are taxed in a manner consistent with how comparable transactions are treated under the law. This hearing presents an important opportunity to begin addressing the current obstacles to that equal treatment. I will focus my testimony on 3 recommendations. 1, creating a de minimis exception for personal transactions. 2, clarifying that block rewards are only income upon disposition. And 3, repealing the application of Section 6050I to crypto. The IRS treats most cryptocurrencies as property. This means that any sale, exchange, or use of cryptocurrency can trigger a capital gain or loss, no matter how small that transaction. For example, a user who spends a dollar-backed stablecoin to buy a cup of coffee would face a surprisingly complex tax obligation. The user must determine the market value of the stablecoin at both the time it was acquired and the time it was spent, even though any gain or loss is likely to be a fraction of a cent. Moreover, because blockchain transactions typically require users to pay small fees in the native asset of the network, the user must also calculate a capital gain or loss on that fee payment. Imagine if sending an email or a text message triggered a tax reporting burden each time. This is the type of tax compliance burden currently imposed on everyday users of these networks. In 1997, Congress recognized a similar problem with foreign currency transactions and created a $200 de minimis exception. Coin Center has long championed a comparable fix for cryptocurrency users, which would exclude gains on personal transactions below a certain dollar threshold. Thank you to Chairman Schweikert and Representative Del Bene for introducing legislation to create that sensible fix in past Congresses. A core element of all cryptocurrency networks